All right. I am too close to that speaker. All right. So, welcome to United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey. A couple things while people are rolling in. We do live stream this. So, if you're ever at home and it's raining or you just don't want to make the drive out, you can always join us on YouTube or Twitch while we live stream. And if you ever miss a presentation because you've checked them out on the website and was like, man, I wish I could have seen that, you can always see them at our YouTube, and I can destroy that mosquito in my face. Um, However, if you want to see the list of presentations that we have, do check us out on our website, uacnj.org. Like I said, you'll find the list of presentations and information about what we do, our telescopes and scientific equipment we have on site, as well as information on our member clubs, because our main goal here is getting you guys into the hobby and sharing our love of astronomy with you. I swear that echo's driving me nuts. So, you can also check us out on our socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Uh, Not so much Twitter these days. It's now X. Eventually, I will remember that, but for now. Uh, Now, for those of you who are here, the safety briefing. If you need to use the potty, it is the porta potty in the back to my left, your right. If you need to, if you want, we also have a museum area and gift shop. You can check that out. I will be manning the gift shop after our presentation. So unfortunately, they still have not allowed me to split myself in two and be in two places at once. When we go to leave, we are using our headlights because we don't like getting run over, and I am certain you feel the same. If you have any flashlights or lasers, do keep them pointed appropriately. We don't want to accidentally blind people because you don't want that to happen to you, so don't do it to other people. With that, there is a small thing. The weather has not been cooperating. I know a lot of people have been asking about the Perseid meteor shower, and all of that depends on how clouded out we are. That being said, if is inclement weather, there are a lot of you here. I would suggest that if it's cold, you'll just calmly make your way back to your car. And usually, lately, the storms have rolled through really fast within 5 minutes. We'll let it calm down. And if not, we'll go from there and see. So, like I said, that's just in case we do happen to get one of those quick summer thunderstorms. But I don't, fingers crossed, we don't have that. With that, tonight's program is What About UFOs with Karl Hricko. Karl received a doctorate degree in Science and Humanities from Rutgers University and was Science Department Chair and taught Earth Science and Biology at Carteret High School, as well as being an adjunct professor elsewhere. He's been past president of astronomy clubs and continues to conduct all sorts of science programs, from the radio to podcasts. You have okay. Occasionally, I get confused who has the podcast and who does not. He began a National Space Society chapter in New Jersey and became a space ambassador for NSS. He has used the Hubble telescope, and currently he's going to tell us all about those UFOs.
Works. Let's see. Yeah, it does work. Sound pretty good. Okay. Hope there's no there is an echo here, by the way, right? You're right. Welcome everybody here. Wow. Let's see if I can talk without creating an echo here. How about now? Is that better? Yeah. All right. Welcome everybody to UACNJ, United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey, at Jenny Jump State Forest, as you know. And you know how to get here in terms of accessing us on the computer, I'm sure. Hopefully this doesn't make that noise all the way, but I guess it is. Okay. Do the best I can. If it's annoying, let me know, okay? So we're here to see what? Information about UFOs, which, by the way, has a new name now. You realize that. Have you come across that? A new name? It's the X. No, no, no. It's not an unidentified X. It's the unexplained aerial phenomenon. That's the new name for it, by the way. I guess they want to get away from the notion where we're thinking of some kind of unidentified flying object being flown by some kind of extraterrestrial. They just want to make it, hey, it's unidentified, unexplained. That's what it is, really. And that's an interesting kind of feature about it, by the way. Let me just. Oh, here's us, by the way, before getting into UFOs. This is us. And I expect a UFO flyover in about a half an hour. So be ready for that. Anybody want to volunteer to be abducted? Wow, how about that? Son of a gun. Hey, by the way, that reminds me, this is an off thing. No connection, but it reminds me of a program out of the Netherlands called Mars One. Anyone hear of that? Mars One, where you can volunteer to go to Mars on a one-way trip. Can't come back. So I had the capability of interviewing, I was fortunate enough, one of the persons who volunteered to do that. And I asked her, why do you want to go to Mars on a one-way trip? She said to me, well, it's adventurous. I'll be one of the first women. Exciting. I said, well, what about your family? She said, well, my husband said it's okay. So, so I followed that up with, well, not that I'm chauvinistic. I followed that up with, well, who's going to wash his clothes and cook his breakfast? I should have said that, I know. But anyway, she said, he can do it. And that was it. But there are people who volunteer for almost anything, is the point of the whole idea, even being abducted by UFOs. That's the idea. A little bit of a commercial. I'm part of the National Space Society as well. There's a chapter here in New Jersey, Space and Astronomy Society of Northwest NW, Jersey. And you can get us on Facebook, get information about us. And if you'd like, I left some of the magazines here that they publish based on the motto. The motto is Ad Astra, to the stars, Ad Astra. National Space Society. Interesting. And you can talk to me if you want to join our organization, our chapter. No cost for anything, except what you pay me. No, there's no cost for anything at all. And this is our logo. So, what about UFOs? Well, do they really exist? Still trying to find out, by the way, because there's various categories of classifying them. Depending upon what they find out, they really are. And there's still some, though. There's about a 1.8% of them that they have gotten information about that are in a category of unexplained, unidentified. So there's still that. No one knows who they are, what they are, etc. Now, some believe that maybe they might be alien travelers coming to us. Or they might be, and this is just recent, it's a book published by this guy, an anthropologist, saying, hey, maybe they're us from the future coming back to visit us. How about that one? That's a new one. Has anyone experienced anything involving seeing? Oh, you have? You want to step You could be talking about this whole thing, actually. Let me ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. Where, when, and how? Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, really? Ah, wow. Yes, I'd like to see that. As a matter of fact, maybe you can make contact. Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. It certainly is. It certainly is. Okay, so we have somebody here who has experienced actually sighting a UFO. That's amazing. By the way, there's a lot of explanations, of course, that attempt to explain the phenomenon. It has been existent since a beginning of time, practically. The idea of sighting these unexplained, strange objects in the sky, that's been going on for quite some time, as a matter of fact. Just that now recently, we're looking at it as the possibility of spacecraft and also the ET, I'll call them ETs for extraterrestrials, make it short. The ETs visiting us from space in these UFOs. That might be the case as well, but there's all other ideas. Robots, it could be airplanes that could be misidentified. It could be probes, robots. It could be military experimental stuff. It could be supernatural, etc. It could be illusions, hallucinations, all these kinds of things. These are categories have been established for putting the sightings into different areas so that they're categorized. That Project Blue Book by the Air Force, which will be coming up later on in my presentation if I keep quiet, you'll see there's a category or categories of classifying all these different kinds of sightings that have taken place that Blue Book was involved in for quite some time, as a matter of fact. So one of the ideas of the sightings and the interpretations of the sightings is that it's a reflection of the culture we live in, is one explanation for it. The idea being that in the past, the culture relied on kind of supernatural things. And so we get into different kinds of religious texts and things of that nature, which is now being interpreted by some people as explanations of visitations by these ETs, characterized and interpreted as gods, angels, demons, and so on within the context of their religious text. That's one explanation. There are many others. Now, of course, you take your money, you take your choice, or pick your choice. But personally, I like to look at those that have not been identified. They actually unidentified. That's hard to explain in terms of natural laws, where some of them in flight, and I don't know if you experience this as a pilot, but some in flight really change their course dramatically, defying what appears to be the laws of nature. And if anybody was inside, how could they withstand those G-forces and so on? Unless it was a probe, some kind of thing like that. That's possible. So this is the idea, though. How do they behave in terms of being affected by what we're calling our natural laws? Also, there was the idea of some naval pilots, you probably came across this on TV recently, where they spotted what was being called UFOs doing these kinds of actions in flight, dramatic changes, some splashing into water without causing a splash, things of that nature. So there are questions that can be asked about this. Again, there's a whole plethora of different categories that which you can place them in. But the idea being, don't throw the baby out with the washwater kind of thing, because there's a big mix between fact and fiction, and sometimes it's hard to sort it out in many of these areas. That's my message at this point anyway. Uh-oh, we better not go here. Warning, Area 51. I don't think there's an Area 51 around here, but I'm sure that some of you are aware of Area 51 in Nevada desert. Warning sign saying, can't trespass, under penalty of being searched, and also maybe other things as well. So there's a warning that you shouldn't enter into this. And it's supposed to be a military test site where they test various kinds of aircraft, weaponry, as a matter of fact, even to the point where some people are saying that there are ETs in this area, live, and those that were picked up after crashing and things of that nature. How true that is, of course, is I guess, questionable. It depends how you feel about it. And we have to pursue it more in terms of looking at the information, which Congress is supposed to get out to us very shortly. But I don't see it coming so far. And if it does come out, a lot is going to be deleted, I'm sure. Now, this Area 51 has spilled over into Area 52, by the way, which also has been created in the Nevada desert as well, having the same kind of function, the idea of high-tech, mystery tech, they're calling it, and the idea being you must get permission from the installation commander in order to go on site. That's the idea of Area 51 and Area 52. Now, what exactly are UFOs? They're unexplained phenomenon, mostly characterized by people who look at them as being of an extraterrestrial source, ETs. That's what UFO, unidentified. It's better just to stick to the idea, I think, of explaining them as being unidentified flying object, or that aerial phenomenon kind of label that's been given to it. Now, what about ufology? This is now a branch of study that a lot of people are following, ufology, study of UFOs. Again, the idea of looking at aerial phenomenon as sort of explained and characterized by people who believe that it involves ETs as well. That's the whole idea of ufology. Now, these, as I mentioned before, these strange objects in the sky have been seen. We have been seeing these for quite some time through history. They're universal. And the motif right above the words shows some images that might be interpreted as flying craft of some sort. Maybe what looks like what has been also called flying saucer, aircraft and things of that nature. And this is a motif that has been taken, I believe, back around 1,000, maybe 2,000 years ago, showing these images. Now, within the context of our culture, our high technological kind of driving culture, we have a tendency to interpret this within our idea of the present day advance in technology through the lens of our present culture, models and things like that. So we have present models that we have in mind, and the language even adds to it. We have a special kind of language, making up words that apply to these UFOs in many ways, depending upon how we see them through our interpretive lens of the culture. So we have that flavor that affects us to a certain extent, but that shouldn't stop us from pursuing the idea of examining what these things are, obviously. Now, this goes back to about 1500 BC, the time of the Hindu kind of epics that were written about various kinds of heroes and gods and so forth, where they had in these epics information about flying chariots and things of this nature. Today, some people look at that and some of the images that may have been shown in these ancient Hindu scriptures, the Veda, for example, shown to look like what we characterize, what we see, what we make in our technology as our aircraft. So there's that problem, to interpret something within the context of our culture in terms of philosophy and our psychology. Here's some more images from the Veda in terms of diagrams that were made in the Veda. And someone looking at this would say, oh, look at that, a UFO. Look at that, an aircraft or something of that nature. But at that time, there were no aircraft or any kind of technology as we experience and have made today. And as a result, they weren't seeing it that way. Maybe they didn't make it to be that way as well. Well, obviously, they didn't make it to be that way. They didn't have it. And so it goes on to other things like paintings in caves, where in these ancient paintings in ancient caves throughout the world, they came across these pictures which could be interpreted by people as showing UFOs and astronauts of sorts. I hear someone coming up with the idea, how were the pyramids built? Hey, maybe these UFOs came down to help us, because these are big blocks that had to be put in place to make these gigantic pyramids. And somebody stuck, well, it looks like something above Khufu's pyramid in the middle, the big one, Khufu. Above Khufu's pyramid looks like some kind of flying saucer or UFO. I don't know how that got in there, but anyway, it was shown, I guess, to just get across the idea that, hey, maybe they came down to help us build things and pass on their information to us to continue our technology, help us continue our technology. And also the idea of other sorts of hieroglyphics located in various temples in Egypt and also in the pyramids. Again, displaying images that could be characterized as UFOs and ancient aliens. And this is the idea. So along this line, with all this information, including paintings which are religious, by the way, and in this one over here, what's characterized in the figure shown in the painting, upper right is some kind of object, and it's magnified to the lower right. To me, it looks like a blob on the painting, but anyway, some people have interpreted it to be an image of a flying saucer above this religious person. I don't know if that could be done or not, but it has been done. And also motifs in various paintings, which may simply be a motif expressing what kind of symbols are placed on different sorts of tapestry and things of that nature, and not necessarily a flying saucer, but still, some people interpret that to be example of flying saucers. So here comes Eric von Daniken, and he comes up with his area of Paleo-SETI research, SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence, Paleo-SETI research, and in it he talks about different religious writings coming up with information about contacts between humans and aliens. And so he's saying these texts then are evidence. These texts plus archaeological research gives evidence for us making contact with the aliens. That's his whole idea then, that there's this connection in terms of the connection in these texts talking about, as I mentioned before, demons, angels, and gods, when in effect, these are really the aliens, the ETs. That's what he's saying. And his whole research, as I mentioned, does study on that. You can get him on, he's still around, you can get him somewhere online on some site. He must have a website or something of that nature if you want to pursue this and see what he's doing out of just a curiosity, as a matter of fact. And we have the idea that earlier in the 19th century, late 1800s, we had a rash sighting of UFOs taking place from Alabama to California. Sightings taking place. Photos taken of it. Well, here's a photo of a racetrack. And allegedly above the racetrack is a cigar-shaped UFO. What the cigar-shaped UFO is doing, I don't know. Maybe he wants to find out who's going to win the race, has a bet on it. I have no idea. But there it is, a cigar-shaped UFO above a racetrack. And so, as I said, it spread across the country. And this set the pace for 20th century sightings of UFOs, which taken place in about the 1940s, 1950s, in that range. And here's an idea of Kenneth. And what he was talking about a pilot. This guy was a rescue pilot. And he was doing a search rescue around Mount Rainier in Washington State. And in that process, he came across 9 metallic-looking objects, which he characterized as flying around 1,700 miles an hour. So he came up with that idea. And this was quite a sighting on his part. First, of the many sightings to follow. So Mount Rainier then seems to be an area where these UFOs were sighted, at least in the past. Here's a sign outside of that famous place where a UFO was supposed to have crashed, Roswell, New Mexico. And now it's sort of evolved into a tourist area, and this sign expresses that idea and that practice. If ever you get a chance, maybe you'd like to visit it and check out Roswell. But that's where a UFO was supposed to have crashed, and this is the guy that spotted the wreckage from the crash on his ranch. He spotted that wreckage first of all on his ranch, and he collected it. He collected that wreckage, and he called the Air Force up, Air Force Base nearby, which was Roswell Field, and from that field came a Major Marcel, who collected the wreckage, brought it back to the field, and they never saw it again. And he took photos of it. They disappeared, and on the wreckage, he claimed there were some kind of markings, characteristics, rather hieroglyphics of sorts that couldn't be identified and couldn't be translated in any way, shape, or form. So this guy, Brazil was his name. And then later we have this guy coming up on the scene. And by the way, it seems to be happening around the 1947s in that range, in the middle 1940s. And this is Adamski, George Adamski. Strange. He said he took photos of UFOs and he was able to communicate with them. He went on board voluntarily. So he wasn't abducted, evidently. Voluntarily, he said. And he said that the pilot told him that he was from Venus. And they were blonde-headed Venusians, if that's the word for it. So he said that he was able to communicate with them, take photos, go on board over the years as they passed on to the 1950s. That's an interesting kind of experience. How true? Again, it's hard to sort out fact from fiction. That's what the problem is. But there is fact. Don't forget that as well. There is that. There is that. And then over Texas, Lubbock in Texas, they spotted these what looked like flying saucers, UFOs in the sky, in formation. A lot of people discovered this. They were characterized initially as flying birds, but bird watchers and so forth, who were used to seeing flocks of birds and things like that fly at night, said that it no way resembled flying birds. But who knows? Lubbock, Texas. That was famous. That was in the papers for quite some time, as a matter of fact. Then over Washington, D.C., over the Capitol, some of UFOs spotted. That's interesting. That date, 60s. And then this is interesting. At, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, right next door to us. There was alleged UFO crash, and the remains were removed. No one knows where they are. But the so-called viewers of the crash, actually, came up with how it looked. And so they made a replica of it. This is an image of the replica of it, on which were some unknown markings as well, some hieroglyphic type of markings. That's how they explained it, at any rate. So if you ever have a chance, you can visit this area in Pennsylvania and find out how this thing looks and maybe ask questions about it. I imagine it's a kind of museum or something of that nature. And we have this guy, interesting. Wow. Billy here. Interesting guy. Billy Meyer. Wow. He said, just like George did, he said that he took photos, he saw them. He was able to communicate. But he communicated by extrasensory perception, telepathy with them, taken on board voluntarily. And on board, he found out that, at least he claimed, of course, that they were from the star cluster of the Pleiades. And so they were Pleiadians that were visiting. And for the same reason that the Venusians were visiting us, to make sure that we didn't get out of control with our nuclear weapons watching over us. But he went further. He said, the Pleiadians are our ancestors. We are the genetic descendants of the Pleiadians. And that was Billy Meyer's idea about this whole area in terms of UFOs. And here are some interesting images of them. Hard to tell whether they're fact or fiction, real or not, because nowadays any picture can be doctored up. Photoshop, and there's other kinds of applications beyond Photoshop. But in any case, these are called photos of some flying saucers, UFOs. If you spot one here that you saw, let me know, okay? That'd be interesting, really. Wow. Some more? Oh, over New Jersey. How about this? Wow, look at this. Passaic, over Passaic. Mahwah, Morristown. Wow. But this is the date. Now, the Blue Book was set up by the Air Force to track all these sightings during that period of time. Lasted those years, you see at the bottom, and it had the categories that I began to mention at the beginning of the presentation in terms of what kind of sightings were made and how they could be explained, made into categories, classified in that fashion. All I want to point out is that the first two, the first one would be celestial events, which are natural. That's the greatest percentage. On the right side, you can see the percentage of the total. And the second one would be aircraft spotting, just some kind of aircraft. Could be experimental by the military. It could be just ordinary aircraft, misinterpreted. At the bottom would be the percentage of the unexplained, unidentified, 1.8% of the total. Still there. Don't know what they are. And we have to ask the question, did they really categorize these correctly? Because don't forget, they came up with these ideas mostly. Weather balloons, that was a famous one, weather balloon. I forgot to mention that the one in Roswell was characterized as a secret weather balloon. And that's because Brazil, the rancher there, could not identify the metal, and no one else could as well. So they characterized it as a secret weather balloon. So weather balloons are a common kind of identification of these UFOs. The planet Venus as well, characterized explanation. And interesting too would be swamp gas, mostly methane with other combinations, hydrogen sulfide and that kind of CO2, so forth. But swamp gas, imagine that. Here's some images, drawn images of the shapes of these various UFOs as depicted by the artist, explained to the artist by the people who have spotted them. You can see the various kinds of shapes. And you may not have known that there are all these shapes that have been spotted by various people. Interesting shapes. They may even resemble Star Wars, the Falcon, that Elon Musk named his rocket after, as a matter of fact. Falcon, the Heavy Falcon is the big one now by Elon Musk, SpaceX, but this is the Millennium Falcon, Star Wars. I don't know if anyone has seen this. This was on TV many years ago, and it was supposed to have been a display of an autopsy of an alien. E.T. Look at that. At first, it was believed to be true. Later on, it was explained that it was not true. And there's still some people questioning it, and I don't know if it's true one way or the other, but it looks like it might be a hoax. See what happens? People throw in hoaxes, and that messes up everything in terms of trying to find out legitimately, in a scientific fashion, whether or not something is really there that can be explained either by natural laws or something we haven't learned yet. And we're learning a lot of things we haven't learned yet in the area of quantum physics. And that's another story. Wow. Get into that sometimes. Blow your mind. And we get the ideas of cloud formations, which can fool you into thinking that they're UFOs. Look at those clouds. Some of them might resemble UFOs to some people. They fall into a category as well. And these are fake photos of UFOs. At least they found out these were fake. Some could fool you if you first saw them, obviously. Now they can fake anything. You can put your head on somebody else's body. As a matter of fact, they're passing around various kinds of YouTube information. Funny thing, comedy showing faces of people on other people's bodies and things of that nature. It looks real. And by the way, they do have projections that can be made, holographic projections of people to make them look as if they're actually there. They had performances doing that on stage, and they intend to do that for actors in the future. Use their holographic image in the future to put on a performance somewhere, even though they're alive. So this raises all kinds of legal questions, obviously. Who's getting paid for this? So these things are taking place. Whoa! This surprised me when I came across this. Nazi Germany, Second World War. Wow. The Nazis were trying to develop a special kind of flying craft that they hoped would be an anti-gravity device, by the way. And if you look closely, it resembles that acorn at Kecksburg that had fallen and is on display. A duplicate is on display now. A replica is on display. Look at it. It's called the Bell, Die Glocke, German. They were in the process of developing it. Whether or not they had tests of it, don't know. And if they did have tests, of course, people seeing it in the sky would say flying saucer, UFO. But they were experimenting with this and don't know how far they got. It disappeared. And don't forget, some of those German scientists came over to our side, and they may have had some information about technology of this nature. And we may be working on these things, as a matter of fact, right now. And it goes on to show that in Canada, a flying saucer type of vehicle was manufactured called the Avro car that had its power from air that was projected outward from the bottom to suspend it. And then we picked it up. We tried to manufacture it because they didn't do too well with it. And it didn't work. It was unstable in flight, so they discontinued the program. But while the testing was going on, you can imagine someone looking up and seeing this Avro car being tested. Wow, what is that? Flying saucer. See? So you have these things occurring as well. And it goes on to show that in New Jersey, at Grover Mill, there was supposed to have been an invasion of extraterrestrial people on board UFOs. Grover Mills. This was written by H.G. Wells and then by later generation Orson Welles, who had a radio program, put on a radio program of H.G. Wells' books about that invasion of the worlds. And what he did is he announced that at the beginning of the program so people would be aware of it, but didn't say a word about it during the program itself and had it acted out on the program as if it was actually happening. And as a result, people just tuning in. Anyone hear this, by the way? This War of the Worlds? No one heard this? Oh, somebody did. Okay, good, good. Yeah, so people were fleeing for their lives in that process. I think some people got killed in that process. I don't know if he was up litigation or whatever along those lines, but it wasn't such a good thing to do, and it's been discontinued since. And Orson Welles went into making movies after that, and acting as well, matter of fact. This led into a plethora of all kinds of books and magazines and comic books displaying the idea that we're being attacked by these UFOs. The bad guys are coming. All over the place, films and so on. I'm sure you've seen some films that characterize the same kind of thing. Ah, now what about the other category? The ones that were taken up involuntarily. Abductees. Anybody been abducted here? No, no abductees? Well, I mentioned in about an hour we'll have a flyover UFOs, and you might find yourself being abducted. So I have to look to see who'll be disappearing from the crowd when that happens. Anyway, abductees say they've been abducted. Again, well, you don't know it, but they said they were abducted. Their feet became lighter. They were drawn upward and into the sky, into the spacecraft, and then later on they found themselves being probed and so on, examined, and then let go, hopefully. Now, these are two abductees, way back 1961, the Hills, Barney and Betty Hill. They were interracial couple and well respected, and they were riding along in their car when all of a sudden the car stopped. They went unconscious, woke up about 3-4 hours later, maybe even more, and couldn't figure out what happened. But they felt that something strange did happen to them. So they subjected themselves to hypnosis, and by using hypnosis, they explain their experience, allegedly, that they were probed, examined. She was afraid. She screamed from time to time. One of the members on the craft showed her a map of where they were from, allegedly. She made a drawing of it under hypnosis, and an amateur astronomer looked at the drawing and came up with the idea that this looks exactly like the arrangement and pattern of stars in a southern constellation called Reticulum. That was strange. Wow. Anyway, that's one of the strange notions taking place with those abductees. And this book had kicked off a flurry of various kinds of people coming up as abductees. Communion. I talked about the idea that maybe about 10%, some people think this, 10% of the population have been abducted, either knowingly or unknowingly. So maybe some of you here may have been abducted unknowingly. Any strange feelings recently? I don't think so. Anyway. Besides humans, animals abducted, cows, cattle mutilation, things of that sort have been explained and described by various ranchers, which is quite interesting. Along with that, we have crop circles all over. By the way, if you heard about crop circles, I just found this out looking up this information. They began in England and maybe in other countries in 1600s. Wow. I never knew that. I thought they were fairly recent. But in any case, 1600s. Imagine that. They happen to trample grass, forming different patterns in the countryside area where the grass is growing, on farms maybe, crops and things of that nature, forming circles and symbols and images. And the images have been explained to be possibly an attempt to communicate to us by these ETs who have made these crop circles. But since then, they've been shown mostly to be hoaxes, almost all of them. Still, there's some hanging out there that are still unexplained to a certain extent. How about the Bermuda Triangle? Ah, there have been sightings there as well, besides things disappearing like ships, planes, and people. There have been sightings as well. The triangle between where? Miami, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. That's the triangle. So sightings have taken place there as well. Here's something you may not have heard of. I didn't either. Alaska Triangle. Wow, between what? Between the three areas of Anchorage, Barrow, and Juneau. Wow. Same thing happening. Observation of different kinds of flying objects. Unexplained. Not identified. And here's one. In the Alaskan Range, the highest mountain there, Mount Hayes, they've spotted strange lights and also craft, supposedly, around this mountain, and it has been described and explained to be a kind of an area where you'll find ETs. So it's like an ET base, I guess you could call it, something of that nature. Mount Hayes. Check out that one. That's interesting. So, what do you think about UFOs? Do you think that they're really ETs in those UFOs or not? How can we explain these UFOs, their existence? Get an idea of what they're all about. I gave a list before. Here's another list about the same thing, really, in terms of the categories that the Blue Book had shown as well. They're pretty much the same as those categories, except they introduce hallucinations, supernatural kind of experiences, and of course hoaxes, things of that sort. Now, this is a picture taken from a TV screen on which news showed recently that naval pilots had spotted UFOs while they're on their missions. And here's an image of one. The black figure in the middle is supposed to be the object that they spotted, around which they framed a kind of a bracket. You can see it there. And they gave information about the same thing you did, as a matter of fact, in terms of how they flew. So you were flying as, what, an airline pilot? Yeah, okay. So this is the idea, that they have been spotted recently, and they have been going through various kinds of maneuvers that is unexplainable in terms of our natural laws. It could be probes, things of that nature that were sent out by the ETs, or they could be the ETs being able to somehow survive under those conditions. But here are images that have been shown. And I'm sure most of you have seen this on TV. If you're watching TV news, they were on recently, within the past month, 2 months, and so forth. Now, here's someone interesting. Here's the guy talking about them being future humans, us in the future, coming back to visit us here in time. Time travelers from the future to the present. He teaches, he's a professor in Montana, at the Montana Technical Institute. And he's come up, Michael Masters, he's come up with the idea that, as I mentioned, these are visitors from the future visiting us. And he's not, why he comes up with this, he's an anthropologist, he comes up with this because in looking at the idea of human evolution, upper picture characterizes what might be characterized. It's not that simple, obviously. It doesn't go one step after the other, branches and whatever else. But anyway, this characterizes an idea of human evolution, how from a bent-over posture to an upright posture was part of the evolution process. And what he does is, he says, because I interviewed him, he says that from his work, he can project what a human should look like in the future based on how we've evolved so far from our past ancestors. And he says that image, upper right at the end, resembles the image in the lower picture of what was characterized by people who have spotted these ETs. Now, they're saying these ETs look, or he's saying these ETs look like what should be us in the future based on our evolution. That's how he comes up with this idea of his book called Identified Flying Objects. So that's interesting, I thought. So I had a chance to talk to him about that whole thing. It's quite interesting. So you can get information. You can contact these organizations here, the Center for the UFO Studies, and also MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. Contact them if you have any information about UFOs, if you'd like to disclose any information of that sort, or if you want to find out information about what they're discovering at this point. As time goes on, they're collecting information from people. You might want to find out about that. You might also access them online and go to their site, and they have the information, I'm sure, of what they've discovered up to this point, and so on. So again, it would be the Center for UFO Studies or the MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. Is it true? Are you a believer? Or are you not a believer? Or are you an agnostic? What are you? That's my presentation. And let me get into a position to have you ask questions.
All right. So thank you, Carl, for another great presentation. Thank you all for joining us. So before we get into the question and answer session, I know a few of you have kind of snuck in while the presentation was going. So I have to go over the safety briefing again.
Sneaky people, I don't know. No. Hello, welcome.
All right. So if you need to use the bathroom, it's the porta potty in the back to my left, your right. If after the presentation, I'll be in the museum and sale and gift shop area. Should you want anything, we have T-shirts and whatnot available. So it does look like it is a bit cloudy. So I do know we have at least one telescope open over there. We are a volunteer organization, so if you have any questions, find one of my volunteers with a name tag. We'd be more than happy to help you with that. When we go to leave, it is dark because we're near the new moon, so we are asking you use your headlights because we don't want to see anyone run over. This is not the world's worst game of Frogger. So, how question and answer is going to work is for the people here. When I ask for a question, you're going to raise your hand, kind of wave it about, and leave it up and waving so that I can see you because I've been staring at a screen monitoring online chat, so I'm a little night blind. And speaking of online chat, we'll get it started off with our first online question.
Why am I here? No.
Because we had Paul abduct you.
Oh, I was abducted. Uh-oh.
Yeah, you asked if anyone was abducted. We abducted you for
Yeah,
tonight's talk. Right. If you had contact with another sentient species, what would you do?
You're asking me this.
Yes. Someone online wanted to ask you that.
If I was abducted?
If you had contact, it didn't say abducted, although if that is your dream for your first contact with another sentient species.
Well, I do it voluntarily, first of all. I don't like being abducted involuntarily. But what would I do if I made I guess you'd have to ask the question whether I was attempting to contact them or they contacted me automatically. In either case, I'd be surprised and I'd be interested to interview them on my podcast.
Hey, we got to be a little self-serving here.
Yeah, why
All
not?
right,
Why not?
so do we have a question out in our audience here? Oh, perfect. I see one over there. You put your hand down. I can't see you.
You mentioned a podcast. I think for those of us who arrived a little bit later, maybe we should. What is that podcast? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Oh, it's called Karl's.
Thank you.
That could be my name. Orbit. Karl's Orbit. And it's on Spotify, it's on Google, Apple, whatever.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch of interviewing some of the astrophysicists about wormholes, who claims that there might be a wormhole in the center of our galaxy, and all kinds of stuff like that. Interesting.
I'll try and remember to put it in the information section
thank you.
on our
Thank
YouTube archive. If you don't see it, feel free to give me a little poke on the messenger or whatnot through Discord or any of the ways to contact us at listed on our website, because sometimes I do forget.
Thank you, Kim. Appreciate that.
All right, so our next online question is more of a statement that those pictures of flying saucers you had
Yes.
for the different kind of look like face-on views of stealth planes that we have currently.
Could very well be.
So
And again, it's a matter of categorizing it in terms of whether it's fact or fiction, fake or real. It depends on different kinds of criteria used to determine whether it's one or the other.
all right, another question from our audience. Bueller? Oh, perfect. I'm like, I hear a lot of crickets. The microphone is so online people can also hear.
that cool
A
question.
cricket has their hand
Uh,
raised? Wow. Ooh.
Hi. So your second to last slide was, do you believe, not believe, or are you agnostic? Where do you come down after all of your research and interviews?
Oh, I mentioned I'm agnostic. I mentioned it before. Maybe I may have missed it when I said
Oh,
it.
I
Yeah.
did. Thank you.
Oh,
So
you're
what
welcome.
makes you agnostic about it then?
Because I don't have enough information, at least from my perspective, in terms of my criteria, in order to determine that, in fact, there are these aliens from space visiting us. We have them in Area 51. They're working with us, giving us technology, and also we're their progeny.
All right. So our next online question is, how much do you think is hoax or just like bored locals? Because, and they go on to say, I mean, we do have records of bored locals messing with people doing films on local cryptids. Why not aliens too?
Oh, sure. Oh, there could be all kind of fakes all over the place. There's no doubt about that. And as I said, it's hard to sort out the fact from the fiction, truth from reality, and we got to be very careful in doing so. But still, not eliminate the possibility that there are some cases that are true. You got to be aware of that.
All right. Another question? I hear a lot of crickets.
Come on.
All right, so I am going to put out a last call for our people online, just because they are a little delayed. They are in the past for our presentation rather than with us currently. So last call online to get any of those questions you might have in. While I was looking down, finding the next question, was there someone who had raised their hand? Oh, perfect.
Oh no, it was them.
My question was, if we call aliens aliens, what if in the future they're actually AI?
Oh,
Yeah, what happens if the aliens
hey,
happen to be
maybe
the
from the
artificial intelligence?
Yeah. They happen to be artificial intelligence, or what happens to our artificial intelligence competing with them
Why not both?
if they cooperate? They may belong to different political parties. Watch out.
That's something we'll avoid that topic here, Carl.
Well, I wasn't getting into it. But anyway, AIs. If you're talking about the idea that they're using AI or they're as smart as AI, how did you mean that? Could you give a further explanation of your question? Make it more elaborate.
Would they be more likely to be AI or computer based rather than organic?
Oh, I see. Like robotic sort of AI coming. That was one of the categories in setting up categories of different kind of sightings of UFOs. The idea of them being robotic in nature, which would be the AI you're talking about. That could be a category, and that hasn't been a category in the Air Force Blue Book, though, because they weren't at that point yet. But
Sorry, I was trying to get the frog from out. Go in the grass. There we go.
wait a minute. Are you sure it's not an alien?
I am quite certain that is a toad.
Oh, okay.
I misidentified it at first, but I have corrected myself. It was dry. It was not wet. Therefore, it is a toad.
Well, it could have been cloaked, you know. Well, anyway, get somebody else.
Like I said, anything can be like I've said, anything can be identified if you're bad enough at identifying things.
Did I answer your question, by the way?
Oh, I heard someone yell all the way back, raise your hand and kind of wave it about, because otherwise I lose you in the sea of heads. Wow, you're back here.
So my question is very simple, actually. Is there any sightings of UFOs at Antarctica? Because
Antarctica. I haven't come.
no human population out there.
Yeah.
All researchers, it's more trusted if we have any sightseeing over there rather than in other continents.
Oh, okay. Well, None that I know of at this point, but as I said, you can contact those organizations. Look on their website, as a matter of fact, MUFON, as I mentioned before, either MUFON or the Center for UFO Studies, and see if they come up with any information regarding Antarctica and your question. That might be the way to go. But insofar as there not being humans there to make it a more kind of reasonable way of saying there are UFOs by it being spotted there, whereas there's no humans flying anything around there. The same thing would be true to a certain extent in one of the slides that I showed in terms of Mount Hayes, the highest mountain in the Alaskan range. There are hardly any people flying at high altitudes there. So maybe that would be something similar to what you're asking about in terms of finding out information about the Antarctic area.
That's actually something. Also, we have another member who volunteers and occasionally gives a talk about his experience, because he's actually gone down to Antarctica and to do science stuff that is way over my pay grade. I believe, like, they're measuring.
Magnetic.
I know right now they're doing something
Fields,
with magnetos and whatnot.
Yeah.
I know he was down there when they were measuring neutrinos.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
lots of science going on down there. I'll have to ask Gil, because Gil Jefford, like I said, has gone down to Antarctica a couple times, and according to him, things get a little bit weird down there, because there's a lot less entertainment than is available on the mainland.
Well, if I went down there, I'd get pretty weird after a while too, I suppose.
Right. So it looks like our last online question is actually a runoff from the last online question, is about the people doing hoaxes. How much misidentification is because people were on drugs? Like, so many abductions also sound like bad drug trips.
That was one of the categories I showed, and I don't remember the percentage on that one, but it might be, unfortunately, increasing at this point now that many of the areas are being made legal, but then again, we're getting into decisions made by members of our government.
Right. So it looks like that wraps up our online questions. Last chance for everyone out here. Oh, perfect. Now I'm getting all the questions.
During the congressional hearings a few weeks ago, the whistleblower mentioned that he said that he has information that the government had biometrics, or I don't know exactly what he used, the language he used, but they have non-human life form in their possession. How much credence do you give that claim?
I'm somewhat skeptical. I'd like to see the data, the information, and whether or not that's going to be made available to the public, I have no idea. But insofar as it has not been shown to the public, where the claim was that it would be, insofar as it has not been shown to the public at this point, and may never be shown to the public, then I think the idea that it's true might be stronger, more supported. Because why isn't the information released if there's nothing to it?
Also, I like to also keep the frame of mind that there's a lot of people who talk to lawyers before going and doing things like that, and the verbiage used as we have a object of unidentified origin, aka Bob over in his backyard made a quadcopter. And now it has non-human biological remains. It hit a pigeon. So until they show me otherwise, I'm kind of interested as what's going on over there that's flashy.
I told you. I told you. I told you.
Sorry, I got a little distracted. Sometimes it's like, oh, look, the bright flashy lights. With that, I want to thank you. Like I said, thank you for joining us, everyone here, everyone on our online chat. Thank you, Carl, for another great presentation. You guys have a great night.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
And like I said, do check us out on our YouTube and Twitch so you can go back and see past videos or join us live. And check out our website, uacnj.org. With that, have a good night.
Hey.